Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Thursday, the 29th of May, 2025. I am Delbridge, Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and this is your status chat. Let's keep it light today because I tell you, I'm still not over my fatigue from last week. If you like this content, please go to CallDelToSell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you when each Friday's blog has been uploaded. Thank you. I think it was last week, I just had a belly full of the political agendas and nonsense and negativity and a continuation of the lies and distortion that we have. Now, we've been driven into two separate tribes, and I don't believe in tribalism. I believe in being in the middle where most of the people are and let the lunatic fringe do whatever the lunatic fringe wants to do. But we have to talk about macroeconomics because it affects our local economies and our individual economies. And it's hard to plan on when to buy your next property. Are we going to see a massive amount of inflation? What is unemployment? All of these things which none of us actually have any control over. We just have to look at the things and try to figure out, I'm at a baseball game, I'm standing on deck, I've got my bat, I have to hit what's pitched. It's not up to me to decide if I get a curveball, a sinker, or whatever. I have to hit what's pitched, and that's kind of where we are. Well, I want to look at what we see today. Once again, we had Chairman Mr. Powell throwing out fear into the economy. I think they're trying to manifest some disastrous situation to come. I really think they're trying to engineer it. And if you don't believe we have engineering in our economy based upon the information and then how that trickles down to you and whether or not you choose to henny penny, is the sky falling, or do we have some real concerns? We have to be honest because we need to buy homes. We need to gain that wealth. How do most people in America, the average person in America, has most of their wealth tied up in their property, not necessarily their 401ks and stock market or in crypto or whatever. Most people's wealth is based in the house because once you buy a house, it pretty well much, all things being equal, ceteris paribus, all things being equal, it's going to ride with inflation. Now, you can buy a house that they come in and put an airport in or a rubbish tip, something like that, or they can have an EPA super site show up or something like that. So it's not always going to go up in value, but it can. It generally does, and but there's no guarantee, unlike the stock market that you can lose everything. So let's look at this right here, because we've had Chairman Powell on the media today telling we're headed for recession. Well, I want to look at this. This is from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Can you see my little finger wiggle up here? This is news release. All right. This is the gross domestic product first quarter 2025 advanced estimate. And I'm going to give you these things because I'm not going to read them all. Just going to show you a few. Let you hit the headline and see what's going on. Gross domestic product first quarter 2025 advanced estimate. BEA 2515. Look, it's down here. We were positive while we had the other team running, the outbat, the outfield and at-bats. When they're in charge, everything's great, and then suddenly we're going to be down. Look at that. It says it's going to be advanced decreased at an annual rate of 0.3% in the first quarter of January. 0.3%. Oh, we're headed for recession. Look at all that stuff. We talked previously about, the Psalm rule, Claudia Psalm, when it was showing by the employment numbers that we were headed for recession, and it was them in charge, the other team who's currently in charge now, and don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Look at the Oz, Mr. Oz up at the thing. Pay no attention. This rule doesn't apply now because we're still in charge and we have an election to get over. I get so tired of the emotional manipulation. I'm trying to make intelligent decisions. But here we are. Now, what we notice here, these data have been superseded. Our latest release for the current estimates and contact information. So let's go ahead and click that. Think it got better or worse? I'm just asking while I'm here. Well, look at that. It's not as big orange, is it? They're starting to revise the numbers up because the idea is we need to come out with something in the news to appeal to everyone's emotions so we can scare the fool out of them so that we can get our little deals working for ourselves behind the scenes. We want our little deals. This is how we get rich in Washington, D.C. with our little backroom deals. It's not necessarily cigar smoke anymore, but there's deals going on. So we give the terrible news, and then when nobody's looking, we revise the number. Remember, it used to be with the laborer, it was good numbers, good job numbers, and then later they would revise them down because, we have to. So we see here with this, right now, we see that let me zoom in a little bit better. Right there, that's not as small as it was. Now, they're still showing it negative, but this is the second estimate, right? All right, this is the corporate profits, preliminary estimates for first quarter, gross domestic, second estimate. See, second estimate is still not a done deal. Watch them, they'll reverse this. Do you remember about 2 years ago when we were in a similar situation? We had gone negative, not just for one quarter, but for a second quarter. And that's typically what? That was the definition of recession. But the people that were in charge didn't want to admit that, so they come out and say, oh no, that's not really what it means. It takes a whole bunch of other stuff. You economically uneducated pedestrian masses, it's not really what the numbers say. And then they fixed it and they revised numbers up so it wasn't negative. So they didn't violate that same historical definition of what a recession was. So now let's go back and look at it. Let's check something else here. Another favorite of mine. And I'm just going to point this to you. This is from, by the way, this is from the House Budget Committee, okay? This is not something that old Dell's making up. He's not going out to his famous or favorite right-leaning, because I'm right-biased, I guess, right-leaning site and finding something that just substantiates what I want to hear. I want to know what the truth is because we need to buy some houses. We need to sell some houses. We need to get that wealth building. And we can't do it if we're paralyzed with fear, if we have paralysis by analysis. There we are, national debt. I don't know how many zeros. I know this is $1 million, and I don't have $1 million in my bank account right now for spending on houses and properties. So I guess this is $1 trillion. What is, I don't know how many, we're 36 of them. That's a whole lot of zeros out here in our national debt. Fact check. Biden misleads on job creation statistics. Back to that. We'll tell you what we want you to believe, and then we'll change it later on when nobody's looking. And I'm not going to get into this too much, but it's back to what Barack Obama had done when he had spiked inflation. He was saying he changed from jobs created to created, or what was it we call saved or created, to make that number. Quit repeating the other number. This is not, but here we see this. This was where we were going before they shut the economy down. And all of his job claims, even many of them were overestimated, were never painting a true story about where we were in the economy. It's just we want to make everybody feel good while we hid what was truly going on. Let me ask you, if you go to the doctor, do you want him just to tell you how great you are and everything's fine, or do you want him to tell you the truth? Like in my case, if he tell me I need to lose some weight, first is thank you, Captain Obvious. But on second of all, yes, I may need to hear that again. And for my own good, I need to know what the truth is. I don't need to have it glossed over. I don't need to give me a speech of how I'm going to have a heart attack tomorrow if I don't lose weight today and do what he wants me to do. Gosh, I get tired of this nonsense. Anyway, I will give you this house, just like everything else. I'll give you these links in the status chat. Let's look at Powell. What was this about? If you don't think there's entrenchment going on that affects the information they spoon feed us, so we just need to not let it run our lives. We need to think for ourselves. CNBC, right there. That's where our source is. Remember this one back even before the swearing in or whatever. Preemptive strike. Powell says he will not resign as Fed chair if Trump asks him to. Do you remember this coming on? What was this about? Why would he even ask this question? What was this preliminary? Is this a preemptive strike right here? Do we remember that? Why? Now, this is the guy that came out just recently and talking about, hey, we're headed for recession. This guy's been fighting the whole time. And it's not just him. Remember Janet Yellen? Another administrator, another CNBC. I know these are kind of left-leaning sources, but we'll use them. Janet Yellen says the administration is fighting inflation, admits she was wrong, that it was transitory. What I'm saying is, give it to me straight, doctor. I can take it. Tell me the truth. Now, I don't believe that we're headed toward recession. It's a possibility. One will eventually come. I'm pretty confident the odds are that we'll see one in the next 4 years, but I don't think it's quite yet unless they're trying to tip the scales today. Right? That's my whole thing. I'll let you review these. And you can already see like the GDP being revised up. The benefit of negative news is how people emotionally respond to it. You and I, we can't afford to respond emotionally. We must respond with our minds over the subject matter. That's what we got to do. Now, okay, I've gone on enough. Let's go ahead and hit our numbers and close out for today. Hello, I'm Delbridge of Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you are currently unrepresented and would like to know how to compare up to 3 properties side by side and room by room, then go over to my new YouTube channel, CallDelToSell. That's 1 L and Del, no spaces. Watch the demo on Real Scout, and then call me and we'll set up your exclusive ad-free account today. Well, let's look at these numbers. Now, last week, 5/22/25, we had 25,965 opportunities. That includes coming soons in the system, in the Real Scout system. That was an increase over the previous week. We had 4834 in the holding on tos, the under contracts still showing. That ratio went up to 19%. That increased just a little bit. What did we do this week? 5/29/25. We see that we have 26,272 in the opportunities. That's another increase again for, 4 weeks in a row. And we had 48,64 in the under contract still showing. That also increased likewise over this week. And the ratio remained exactly the same at 19%, rounded to the integer level. Yeah, last week was a bad week. I've just kind of had a belly full of the political motivated noise. I'm just trying to make my best decision personally and for other people where I relate to other people. And I'm not trying to get one side in over the other, but we have to be realistic and see that there are people desperately trying to manipulate our emotions. Because, there is a Spinoza quote that says, emotion will never yield to reason. It will only yield to a stronger emotion. And so that's the thing. It's kind of like a drug. If people are trying to keep you constantly hyped up, it becomes harder and harder and harder to break that last hype. And that's where we are. I think we're doing pretty good shape. Are we without risk or fear? Absolutely not. We had inflation a while ago eating us away with our buying power. Now we're getting inflation under control. Now they're trying to scare us with recession. One day at a time. That's how we do it. One day at a time.